He took office in January 2011 as the 9th Commissioner of Labor for Georgia. He was the first Republican to head the department, and his commitment to the citizens of our state was a goal as dynamic as it was challenging. He set out to reshape the operation of what a successful labor department looked like. No, not just facing the demands of this state, but to facing the demands and the challenges and the opportunities presented by the new economy generation of employers and job seekers. Greetings, everyone, and welcome from the Technology Association of Georgia. It's April 5th, 2016, and this is Tech Talk. I'm your host, Frank Baia. Department of Labor Commissioner Mike Butler. Within his first year in office, he formed the Regional Coordinator Program. Later, the Business Service Unit, programs to foster relationships with Georgia's employers and economic developers, and began an aggressive and successful initiative focused on the business community and employer-driven service delivery. When it came to Georgia job seekers, he created a special workforce assistance team that designed the job readiness program to help unemployed and underemployed better market themselves. In 2014, Commissioner Butler developed customized recruitment that bridged the gap between employers and job seekers still to this day, available to newly located businesses, and streamlines the recruiting process. There's more. He developed a Georgia Best program, high school base, that certifies students as work-ready. It became so popular that the department expanded the program to include middle schools. Now launching this week, State Labor Department Regional Business Summits. That's right, 12 informational networking events across the state designed to meet the needs of managers, human resource professionals, business owners, and supervisors seeking practical guidance and real-world tips for handling the toughest management and compliance challenges, and who want to operate effectively within the legal climate that is affecting the 2016 workplace. It's a tech talk about jobs, creating them, finding them, and keeping them, and expanding them all across the Peach State. Up to the Tech Talk, as informative as it is impactful, we speak with the head of the Georgia Department of Labor, Georgia Commissioner Mark Butler. This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Commissioner, welcome to Tech Talk.
Thanks for having me.
Well, obviously, there's a tremendous amount of good news and information that have coming out of your offices, out of the Labor Department over the last several years, 3 or 4 years since you've been in office. 2011, I think. One of the things I think that's important to comment is that I know you were the 9th, but also the first Republican, so it's still a case where it's a hats off, and a lot of what you've been able to accomplish is something that I think you stated right from the beginning as a goal, and you know, it's one of those things where you not only said you were going to hit a home run, you kind of pointed over in that corner and said, I'm going to hit it right over there, and boom, you did. In a continuation of those successes, let's talk a little bit about the upcoming business summits. I understand that you've got those starting this week, and not only is it going to be one, but a number of them across the state. Maybe give us some insight as to what the purpose of them are.
Well, we started doing the business summits about 3.5 years ago, and it came about because, you know, when we would talk to different other business groups, you know, a lot of people would complain about, you know, the constant change in rules and regs, not just Department of Labor, but, you know, with the federal government, other departments, and how hard it was to keep up to date. And most of these complaints came from small businesses. So we had the idea to start doing these business summits, and most of it was focused on us at first. And we'd have an expert in there talking about how to handle UI claims, unemployment claims from the employer side, because there wasn't a lot of information out there, and a lot of employers were making mistakes during that process. And, you know, it caused the process to go a lot longer than what it should have, and that's bad for them and bad for us also. But we also had other speakers in the past. We've had labor lawyers. We've had experts in healthcare law. Matter of fact, this year we're actually going to add something that was through the request of the businesses around Georgia, and that is we're going to have a specialist when it comes to social media and how to handle that in your business. Well, because a lot of people don't know how that can really help their businesses grow.
You know, I think one of the things that we do on Tech Talk is we cover all of the technologies, not only vertically, customer relationship management or health IT or fintech or whatever the vertical is. But we talk a lot about horizontal issues, and the horizontal things are like cloud and high-speed connectivity. Certainly one of the things that comes up on time and time again is the issue of security. And I think the reason I bring that up is that I think another one of the issues that comes up time and time again is the constant in the security area. Is the funny thing is that you don't even know sometimes that you've been hacked. So you can't solve a problem that you don't even know you have. And I guess the point I'm making is that it sounds to me that this kind of summit meeting, especially if you're a small business employer, you may not even know what you don't know, and that by going to an event like this, not only are you going to get an opportunity to network with a lot of fellow business leaders and business players, but also to be able to get involved in some discussion and some insights that may present or help you with what you're already working on, but maybe even alert you to some of the things that you're not aware of.
Well, it's very interesting to sit back in the audience and watch people when some of our speakers get up there, especially I remember one year when we had a lady that was talking about changes in labor law, the do's and don'ts of hiring and firing, and you could see some light bulbs going off and people's mouth drops at things that say, oh, my gosh, I think I did that, and the reason why we do it is it helps keep, especially our small businesses, out of trouble. And one thing that, a lot of times that I think government gets lost in is, when in whether it's state government or federal government, whatever it is, the constant, rules and regs change and all that. For the really big companies, that's not a problem because they have an army of lawyers and accountants that it's their job to constantly keep up with it. But when you're talking about a small business like the one I grew up in, you don't have that availability to you, and you can get yourself in trouble without even meaning to. And so that was one of the driving factors behind doing this, is to help, especially the small business owner, to keep up to date with a lot of these changes, so that way they won't run into some of these traps.
Well, that's an attitude that I think a lot of, I'm an entrepreneur, first-generation business owner, and I know that in a lot of cases, first-generation entrepreneurs and even those that are trying to keep the family business going, a small business going, it is complicated and it is crazy, and it's really good to hear. I think that from a government perspective, to understand that these regulations aren't to hold you down; they're to help you out and to help those that are trying to try to stay in their core competency, maybe to do one thing, to have to deal with all of the other things that are necessary in order to stay competitive in this reality, in this particular new economy. It's good to have a friend, and it's good to know somebody that, I guess, from a cliche in the field, they'd say, feel our pain. So it's nice to know that as far as the state of Georgia is concerned, there's one department, and that's certainly the Labor Department, that not only understands what it's got to do and how to deal with the regulations, but it's got enough sensitivity and a reality check from a business perspective to go out and say, look, guys, we get it, we understand it, come on in, let's talk about this, and we're going to set up. And again, I'm understanding they're not just located, say, for example, the proverbial metro situation where you got the two Georgia scenario. You've got them statewide. There's some 12 different meetings over the course of the next several weeks, several months, correct?
Well, actually, there's going to be 13 because we split the Atlanta area up into a north and a south because it obviously is so large. But we basically look at each delivery service area, which is determined by Department of Economic Development and others, and it looks a lot like or very similar to congressional districts, and we try to move them around those districts every year if possible. Sometimes it's not possible due to finding the right type of venue. So, but yeah, we do these every single year. We try to change the speakers up, and also one thing that's good to know for HR managers out there, for the last several years, we've been able to get these seminars qualified for continuing education credit for them. So that's always helpful.
Sure, it's a win-win. Well, let's talk a little bit about the new economy. Obviously, it's hard to deal anymore. E-government, I guess, would be the term. We've talked about it for years. Now the promises begin to actually see itself become a reality. I guess where I'm going to go here is that I know back in January, you guys launched a new online registration for employers. I'm sure that a lot of us have been involved in it. Some of us are aware of it, but one thing would be an interesting perspective for our listening audience, and that is maybe from the bottom line, how's it going? Can you tell us more, and what about the new system?
Well, we've actually got two systems, and one of them has to do with new employers. And right now we've had a lot of those as the economy keeps recovering. And one of the funny things that we had to deal with when we first, me and my team got here about 6 years ago, is we had a lot of old technology here, in some cases no technology.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, one of my jokes is the only reason why companies still make fax machines is because the Department of Labor exists, because we're so paper heavy. And one of the things was when an individual wanted to start a business and they wanted to apply for a DOL account number, it could take weeks and weeks, and even sometimes it would get lost quite literally through the paper shuffle.
Mm-hmm.
And so we finally got a program written that works with our other systems that's able to do that online now. It's it's brand new. We went through the testing phase. It's working really well. And so it's taken that process down from 3 to 4 weeks down to instantaneous.
Wow.
And so that's helping on both sides. But we've also added something new. We've always had a job posting system that we've always had for years, but we had to fax in your job postings, and then somebody here would have to put those online, and quite frankly, it was cumbersome and it didn't work very well. Well, we have a new jobs listing board called employgeorgia.com, and we just recently opened up the employer side of it, which is something that's going to be very helpful to employers, where you can create your own account and do your own job postings. But not only that, one of the new requirements that we have out there is we're requiring a lot of individuals who are currently on unemployment to have to post a resume. And so now, instead of just the job seeker looking through the job postings, employers will be able to look through resumes also. And so it'll be a job search going both ways. And so that system has also recently gone online.
Well, that's powerful. I mean, that sounds like absolutely the right thing to be doing at the right time. One of the things that, again, our audience, I'm sure, is we're on information overload, and we hear so much about jobs and so many confusing perspectives on them in terms of exactly what the unemployment rate is and and how does it calculate it and what does it really mean? Is it a good thing, a bad thing? I mean, it used to be relatively simple. It was like a weather rock. If it was raining, you just check to see if it was wet. And then it's raining. We used to say you had a job, you were employed. Now things are so complicated that I think it requires, I guess, an expert to decode it. But I think we're talking to the man who should know, and right on the top of what is really going on from the current situation. What is the current unemployment rate? And I guess I don't want to put you on the spot, but what does it mean to Georgia?
Well, I'm going to say something that gets me in trouble with some economists. But right now in this economy that we're having in Georgia, I'll tell people don't pay attention to the percentage of what the unemployment rate is. And the reason for that is what's most important is the numbers behind that rate, because you really have to dive into that, because sometimes you can actually have an unemployment rate go down and the numbers behind it are actually bad, and vice versa. Like here recently we've had some local areas where the unemployment rate has actually ticked up somewhat, but the numbers behind it indicate good news. Because one of the issues that has been going on for a while is we have a lot of job postings right now in Georgia. Matter of fact, right now, according to our new system, we have over 130,000 current job listings in the state of Georgia alone, and these are jobs we need to get filled. And so one of the big complaints is there hasn't been enough people coming back into the workforce, and we've had a low participation rate. Well, here in the last several months, we've actually seen that participation rate, or people coming back into the workforce, tick up, and that's actually caused especially some local unemployment rates to actually increase. So it looks like some bad things are happening, but actually it's good, because we needed those people to get back into the workforce and start filling some of these jobs that we have opening. So I tell people, whether the rate's going up or going down, the things you need to pay attention to is, first of all, are you creating jobs? And if you are, you're seeing the jobs numbers increase, then good. All right. Are you getting more layoffs? And that has to do with what we call initial claims. Now, are those increasing? Are those staying about the same? Or are they decreasing? Now, you want them to decrease or stay the same. Now, if that's happening, then that's good news. So you have to look at the numbers behind the numbers. And right now in Georgia, what we're seeing is the claims are down, job creation is up, and we're seeing more individuals come back into the workforce. So even though it's not moving at a fast pace, it's been very steady and very consistent, and that's what we want to see.
Well, when you talk about the number of available jobs, I'm not surprised, but it is amazing the amount of actual jobs that are available. And I think one of the things that you hear a lot about, especially from a technology standpoint with the association, is job readiness. The fact that there's so many jobs in the tech vertical that people are just simply really not really qualified about it. And I think one of the things that you were sensitive to a long time ago with I'm trying to think of the term for it. You call it the high school program, the Georgia base, where your job readiness for the high school, and actually it turned out to be so successful. Even the middle schools are now playing around with it. But I guess really where I'm headed is that talk a little bit about job readiness and talking about not only is it a case where there's availability, but the fact that in a lot of cases, there's a need for certain job categories, and how do people get ready to be able to participate in that type of new economy growth?
Well, believe it or not, I mean, outside of some of the obvious things that we heard from employers, like, for example, especially here in the last several years with construction picking up a lot of need in the skilled trades, obviously in the computing world, I mean, we're seeing demand for all types of different specialties. As a matter of fact, I think I saw a recent stat the other day that for, I think it was in the next couple of years, for every graduate in computer programming, there'll be 3 jobs they could choose from. So, you had those obvious needs that are out there in the economy, but the number one need that we heard across all different sectors was the need for soft skills in the workforce. And a lot of people say, well, what in the world are soft skills? What does that mean? And that's why we came up with the Georgia Best program to address soft skills, because soft skills are the things that most people would think are obvious, things like knowing that it's important to show up on time, to work well with others, to dress appropriately. Of course, dress appropriately is starting to become kind of depends. If you're working for Google,
really,
like I have a friend who just started doing some consulting work with Google, and this guy, he's always been a buttoned-up, suit kind of guy.
His mama wouldn't let him go out to go to school dressed like that,
And the people at Google told him, you can't show up dressed like that. He said, you need to go buy you some hoodies and you need to buy you some, khakis.
That's interesting.
Some kind of tennis shoes. And the guy's like, no, I can't dress like that. And he goes, you don't understand. You have to. And so, I mean, it kind of depends on where you work.
Well, that's an insightful comment when you talk about the Georgia Best situation, because that's got to be confusing to the different generations. Because in some cases, they're going to think, the way I woke up this morning, I can go to any kind of job interview, and certainly that's still a reflection in terms of some of the actual competitiveness as far as some of the positioning is concerned. So some of that soft information that you're talking about becomes critically important, because it isn't all about technology. It's also about a number of other things that either support that industry or are impacted by some of the, when you mentioned the graduates having 3 jobs, those jobs are not even not necessarily fairly good salaries. Some of them are extremely high salaries. And again, I know for myself, we talk about traffic, but you can't turn around anymore, don't see ground moving as far as the construction industry is concerned. So lots of dynamics in play. So I think it's, when you're in high school and even in middle school, you need to be thinking in terms of, what do I do next after I get out of here and really have to go to work? How does that happen, and how do you go about doing it? And I think in a way the best program kind of covers that. Is that correct?
Well, that's correct. It kind of gives you the inside track. Some of the things that maybe you weren't taught in the classroom, it basically comes down to presentation skills, knowing how to present yourself, what employers are expecting in the workplace. A lot of the things that we're hearing, complaints from employers from all over the state. I mean, we hear from employers all the time, and it's funny that you said a while ago about getting up out of bed and going for a job interview. There's actually a question that I ask a lot of business groups around the state, and sometimes people think I'm doing it as a joke, but it's not. And that is, I'll ask individuals in the crowd, I go, how many in here have ever had somebody walk into your place of business and either apply for a job, come in for an interview, or ask for a job application, and they showed up in their pajamas? And you would not believe how many hands will get raised depending on the group.
But see, that's a generational reaction, because some of those kids probably spent a fortune on that pajama outfit that they just bought at the Gap or something. No, but I get you. I hear exactly what you're saying. Go ahead. It's just really an interesting point. It's like the fax machine. It really does hit home.
Yeah, but it's an issue that has to be tackled, because I mean, there's obviously you do have a generational issue, but there are some basics that you need to be able to understand that are very important to you getting a job. Even just the matter of fact of having your resume formatted correctly, or make sure there's no misspelled words, not answering your phone during an interview, or texting on your phone during an interview. I mean, there's some basic things that we cover in this that can help you get a job, and also how to keep a job. And it is one of the number one requested skill sets that we're seeing out there with the business community right now.
Well, it's a form of mentoring, and I think in a lot of cases, no matter how much you want to think that every child, every teenager is getting the kind of support that comes from, say, a good father or mother that is a modeling type situation. Sometimes even in those environments, they're not getting that kind of training or that kind of sensitivity, and I think in a lot of cases they're simply not. So it's good to know that, again, from the standpoint of looking at all of the dynamics that are in play, that you're covering so many of the bases, right down to even including when you're talking about making, I had to laugh because I had someone just in my office today that was doing exactly the same thing. He was talking about a job interview, and he was answering a text while he was talking to me, and I'm thinking, how many meetings can you be at one time, son? That kind of a thing. Well, I know your time is extremely valuable, and thank you so much for taking so much of it already. But before we wrap up, any specific programs you'd like to share about today?
Well, we have a lot of things going on right now, and one of the programs that people don't hear a lot about that we've been getting a lot of traction on is a program called Customized Recruitment, and we've actually used it anything from factory jobs all the way up to high-level corporate jobs. And what it is, it's a program that we developed to help the Economic Development Department attract businesses to Georgia. And in a nutshell, what we do is we talk to the prospect that's looking to come to Georgia or the one that has decided to come to Georgia. We find out what they're looking for. We do some hands-on training with them so that way they can better identify the talent. And we will actually go out there and we do the high-level recruitment for those companies. It's something that the Georgia Department of Labor has never done before. It's something that other Department of Labors around the nation are not doing right now. And we've had companies tell us that we've saved them anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000. And the reason why that's important is because that's a story that these companies will tell the next prospect that may be thinking about coming to Georgia, and it makes our state much more attractive than it may some of our competitors in the Southeast or in other parts of the nation. And it's we did I think it was over 36 recruitments last year, and we're probably on pace to beat that number this year. But it's a great program. It's giving value to these companies that are coming to Georgia, and most importantly, though, is putting individuals back to work quickly, because in a lot of these recruitments, we've seen anywhere from 60 to 70% of the individuals that we're placing in these jobs were actually currently on unemployment at the time when we placed them.
Well, that's smart. That's just smart. I've heard about it. I haven't heard it explained in as much detail. Some of our listeners may be aware of it, but the bottom line, it continues to reinforce a comment I made earlier, and that is your perspective, your attitude almost comes from a business standpoint rather than from a government standpoint, and you feel it and understand. When I think in terms of the kind of competition there is in economic development today, with everybody trying to determine inbound investment and relocation and investment coming in from headquarters or decentralized manufacturing or whatever it is, that to know that there's an organization that not only provides the service, because certainly there's a money-saving situation, but that speaks volumes and volumes of the approach, of the spirit and the attitude of the government agency that you're dealing with. So hats off on not only just doing it from the standpoint of accelerating the job process, but once again putting out we're open for business, and we show people not just by talking about it, but by doing it. Thank you, Commissioner. It's such a joy. I'm real proud for you and proud of you, because I know the great job you guys have been doing. I'm an old entrepreneur, so I really respect not only old school, but I enjoy people that are thinking out of the box and still keeping the fundamentals and understanding that it is a game of blocking and tackling, but every once in a while you got to score. And I think you're doing both of those things. So hats off to you, and thank you again for taking so much time to join us for at least a few minutes from your busy schedule today on Tech Talk.
Oh, it was my pleasure.